Hey, what's going on, guys? This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. If you're looking for a vehicle, you know I'm your guy. Primarily new 23, 24, F-150, SUV, electric. You've got to reach out to me. Norman.James at OakRidgeFord.com, at Norm at Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. It is Sunday, May 5th, 2024. It is all over for the Maple Leafs. 7 games with the Bruins. They tried coming back in the series, took a lead with, 10 minutes to go before a potential clincher, but could not hold on to it. Boston comes back to tie it, and David Pastrnak puts the Leafs out of their misery in overtime. Mitch Marner, where were you, man? The Leafs are done, and we are here trying to pick up the pieces. OG's Converts, the beat goes on even if the Leafs are no longer playing. Mr. Augello, good morning.
Good morning, Norm. So obviously I look at things now through the prism of a reporter and detach myself emotionally as much as I possibly can from the story. But I do have relatives that are Leaf fans, and when the message came out at about 5:30 or 6 o'clock that the possibility was there that Joseph Woll was not going to start in Game 7, I logically looked at that and said, they're not going to win. There's no way they're going to win. And I am not simply blaming the loss on Ilya Samsonov, because in the first 2 periods, he played pretty well. But they take the lead in the third period on the Nylander goal. And within 2 minutes, the game is tied. And if you watch the replay, it's a short side goal, blocker high, and I think it was Hockey Night in Canada said like 8 of the goals that Samsonov had given up had been high blocker. So they had a book on them. Same, and this is the reason why Ilya Samsonov will never play for the Leafs again. In 2 instances in this series where they were up, and I think it was Game 3. This is when Bertuzzi and Marchand were going at it at the blue line. Trent Frederick comes in and buries it short side on Samsonov, which was a soul-crushing, momentum-killing goal.
Right.
And then last night, they're up 1-0. They don't even get a chance to try to burn time. Within 2 minutes, the game is tied. And I predicted the Bruins in 7. Okay, I'll pat myself on the back. It wasn't because I had anything against the Leafs. It's because I looked at this team. I looked at the series logically, and I said, I think the Leafs have more talent.
Right.
But do they have the psychological wherewithal to beat the Bruins?
Right.
And in conclusion I draw from losing in Game 7 for the 4th time in Boston, in TD Garden in Boston in 11 years, is that they do not. And this team, how many years have I said that the core group has to be augmented? If they don't, people should stop going to games, because what's the point?
OG's Converts, what say you? This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford, Norm in London, Mike in Buffalo. It's all over. And it's a tough pill to swallow, because, after Game 4, we anticipated it being over a lot sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Sheldon Keefe makes a goalie change. The team plays, as you have said in the past, equates to excellence with its hair on fire. And it gets engaged as if it knew that elimination was staring them in the face, and fought back to make this a 7-game series, took a lead in the third period of the deciding game. What hurts more, Mike? Losing, emphatically, or going all the way to the very end in overtime with a team that you've had trouble beating, and then losing, in such nail-biting and heartbreaking fashion?
I think I cited it on the most recent, or one of the more recent convos. Roger Lajoie, who used to work in Toronto radio on Fan 590, he posted, he was going back and forth with somebody and said, the Leafs, this is before Game 5, how typical Leafs that they're going to bow out in 5 games. And he's like, no, the most Leafy thing would be they win Game 5, they win Game 6, They go to Game 7 and they lose in heartbreaking fashion. That is what I mean. Okay, for the mental wherewithal of Leafs Nation, it would have been better off that they lost in 5 because now. But the thing is, they got people's hopes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they didn't do this on purpose. They were trying to win. But again, they had to resort to playing Boston Bruins hockey in Game 5, 6, and 7 to have a chance to win this series. What happened in the first 4 games?
Right.
The one game that they did win, Austin Matthews took them on their back. Now, you can't ignore the fact in this series that they didn't have William Nylander for half the series. They didn't have Austin Matthews for half the series. And you could say, well, they got to Game 7 in overtime without.
Joseph Woll didn't start the series.
Joseph Woll didn't start the series. Now, going into the playoffs, would you have started Joseph Woll, who had struggled since he came back from the high ankle sprain? No, you would have started Samsonov. But Samsonov showed you that he was starting to slip at the end of the regular season with those 2 games where he didn't play well. And he didn't play well in Game 1. He played good for about half of Game 2. He didn't play well in Game 3 and Game 4. He gets pulled. And then when the team needs him the most in Game 7, he was good up to a point. But the point of a great or even clutch goaltender is making the saves when you need them. And he made some saves. But at 1-0 in the third period with Boston running around, they needed him to stop the play, make a save, cover it up. He didn't. They tied the game. Eventually, they lost the game.
So Sheldon Keefe changes the dynamic. Joseph Woll gets in net. The team becomes completely different. Too little, too late, in my opinion. And, had they had Joseph Woll at their disposal for Game 7, would have played, could have changed the result. But Joseph Woll is injured. Ilya Samsonov is his only option, right? Like, so here you are, Keefe making the adjustments to get his team in position to win, and then just vulnerable because the guy who was behind this fresh approach and this desperate approach that was generating results is no longer available. It'll be interesting to see how things turn out for Sheldon Keefe, among many other people who are complicit in this defeat. Let's just go back to the Pastrnak winner. What the hell was Mitch Marner doing there? And I'm sure he's being piled on as we speak due to the fact that hasn't been the greatest playoff player over his career, and for him to be connected to this, another end due to the fact that he really didn't provide any coverage for Pastrnak and almost seemed like a deer in the headlights.
Well, it was.
How do you break that down, Mike?
It was a dump in, and it was a dump in that was angled perfectly for the puck to come out toward the net. So, so you could defend that. You could defend Riley. Riley was basically in the slot when the puck was dumped in, and Pastrnak got it in a perfect spot, cut in, and got to the net. The problem is that the video, I'll retweet the video that I had. The video is likely the coup de grace for Mitch Marner in Toronto. Although, again, I will say it again, because for those who are saying, well, they got to trade Mitch Marner. If Mitch Marner doesn't want to go anywhere, he's not going anywhere, folks. So you better get ready for disappointment. If he wants to go someplace else, if he's tired of being the centerpiece of criticism, then maybe he says, okay, trade me to a couple of different places. I'll be willing to waive my no move clause to go here or there or whatever. But they're not going to get. Pierre LeBrun tweeted out, and it was a perfect illustration. You're going to call for change, and there may be change, but don't expect if you're going to try to trade Mitch Marner or one of the other core guys, you're going to get full value for them because they're $11 million players, and they know that you want to trade them. So you're not going to get full value, but that's beside the point. It was a great play by the Bruins. It was a great play by a great player in Pastrnak. And, he positioned himself well, and he got to the net, and he buried it. I just wonder how much of this team that we saw on the ice at TD Garden in Boston last night is going to be at training camp,
right,
September. And I think there's going to be some dramatic changes.
Mike, real quick before we get into that, and there's so much to unpack. There's so much to box up and ship out.
Yep.
But last night, I mean, just going back to the stats on the entire series, outside of the Leafs not doing anything with the man advantage, the stats are quite similar. Obviously, Boston scoring more goals in the end, but the stats are similar. This was a hard-fought series. In Game 7, there's Ilya Samsonov not making a save 2 minutes after the Leafs take the lead, high blocker side. It's Mitch Marner, on the game ender, not providing competent, desperate coverage of a guy who's super dangerous and who ultimately ended the Leafs season. But throughout the rest of the game, it was really tightly contested. Tight checking, it was effervescent, it was really good playoff hockey. Was there another moment where you felt like the Leafs blew a chance to do something, maybe something that most people wouldn't have recognized at the time, but looking back, that could have made a difference in the Leafs winning Game 7?
Well, I mean, there were opportunities that I thought that they were going to get that they didn't get, and that's not to say that the officiating was the reason that they lost the game. They pretty much stayed out of it. Boston had 2 power plays. The Leafs had 1. The Matthew Nyes break that he was pulled down, and they didn't call a penalty shot. They didn't call a penalty. They didn't call anything. So that was a little surprising. But there were instances where I think Bertuzzi yanked down. On the Nylander goal, he yanked down Carlo in the corner, and it got to man. And I've had that stayed as the game-winning goal, you would be hearing like hue and cry that would make Ed Snyder blush from Boston in terms of, oh my God, you yanked down Carlo and it turned into the game-winning goal. Yeah, okay. So I mean, but there were calls that weren't made. There were missed opportunities. The Nylander chance late, literally with seconds left in regulation, that went off. I think it was Wotherspoon's skate, and
right.
Swayman was the difference in this series.
Yeah.
The Leafs got great goaltending for 2 2/3 periods. They got him for 6, and Allmark wasn't even bad in Game 2. The Leafs did not get consistent goaltending, and that is going to be probably among the most important things that Brad Treliving is going to have to address, because Samsonov is gone. And the one thing that comes out of the series, and I don't blame the critics for saying this, they have to find out whether Joseph Woll can stay healthy. I mean, when he plays, he's great, but This is 2 injuries. One that took him out as the starter in December, that he was out for 3 months, and apparently got hurt on the goal late in Game 6 that wouldn't have even given the Bruins a tie in the game. So they have to determine whether they think Joseph Woll can stay healthy, and if they think he's no better than a tandem goaltender, which he might be, then they're going to have to go out and find themselves a 1A or a 1B, and that's a tough prospect.
Handshake, line respect, and Toon Win are going at it about Mitch Marner. There's going to be a lot of discussion about number 16, as if there hasn't been already, Mike. The Leafs came within a goal of eliminating the Bruins and moving on to the second round. Didn't end in 4, didn't end in 5 or 6. It ended in overtime of Game 7. The stats are very, very close. One team versus the other, with the exception of the Leafs' ineptitude on the power play. Looking at this thing after all is said and done, was it that close, Mike? Was it that razor thin? The Leafs winning another first round series and going on to potentially some amazing things over the course of the months to come, getting closer to a Stanley Cup final? Or look, Boston lost its nerve a little bit. This thing should have been over a lot sooner, and the Leafs do need deep-rooted changes to change the complexion of the team, to become a better, stronger team that doesn't put itself in these kinds of positions.
Well, I mean, it is going to be a summer of reflection with this organization. I think the first thing that's going to end up happening is probably Sheldon Keefe will get fired. I don't think again, I know there are critics out there of Keefe, of his strategy, of his, line matching and things that he does. In the end, he's going to get fired because he's been here for 5 years and they haven't done anything.
And what's wrong with change for the sake of change? I mean,
nothing. And especially when you like, I think there would have been a hesitancy if Dubas was still the general manager for them to fire Keefe. But I do think that Treliving, he gave him an extension.
Right.
That doesn't matter because there's a lot of coaches that got extensions and then got fired. Right. They gave him an opportunity. He gave him the tools, and he didn't get it done. So, yeah, I would say more than likely he's getting fired this week. And there will be a number of candidates. Somebody in the chat is saying Joel Quenneville. I think that's a possibility. That name has been out there in terms of chatter. That presents itself its own set of problems because of his history, and not only the thing that everything with Chicago in 2010, but Quenneville has a way, and there are players that he loves and players that he doesn't, and that was a problem at times in Chicago, but he won cups, so they over.
Yeah, but to get back in the league, Mike, don't you think he's going to change who? Don't you think he's going to change the guy who made him successful within?
Maybe, but the question is will the changed Quenneville be the guy who can bring you championships?
Right.
So we'll see. I mean, and it's not even for sure that it's going to be him. It could be other coaches. So, but I think the first move will be that Sheldon Keefe is fired.
Right.
Then Keith Pelley, the head of MLS&E. There's no rush to make a determination on Brendan Shanahan other than maybe pressure from, the fan base.
That would be an execution due to frustration. Like somebody has to, but.
No, it won't be an execution based on frustration. It'll be an execution based on track record and based on the fact that Brendan Shanahan has been here for 10 years.
So he's another guy like Keefe who's probably, we should really consider parting ways with due to the fact that, the tenure is up. He's done a good job, but it's time to change the leadership.
I'll say this. I mean, is it a guarantee? No. I mean, like I said, Keith Pelley is going to come in there with a fresh perspective.
Right.
But this is the issue. Brendan Shanahan has been the poster child and the defender of the core four and keeping them together for years.
Right.
You cannot, when you sell a narrative that is clearly wrong or false, you own it. And that's the problem. He owns the fact that this core group he with his say so. Now, I would have signed Austin Matthews to a long-term deal, but back in, I think it was 2018 or 2019 when he signed his extension. Okay, you made him the second highest paid player in the NHL, but you only gave him 5 years. Okay, well then pay him what he needs to be paid to get him for 8 years, because everybody is getting their best player on 8-year deals. Connor McDavid signed an 8-year deal. Nathan McKinnon signed an 8-year deal. They didn't do that. Again, the failing of this organization goes back to 2018 and giving in to William Nylander and not trading him instead of when it was a situation when he was holding out. They signed him. They gave him what he wanted. They went down the road of giving these players what they wanted. And when you give them what they want, then you have to say to them, okay, we gave you what you wanted. Now do what we want, which is win. And they can't, and they didn't. And now maybe Shanahan will have to pay with his job. But if at the absolute minimum, he cannot, if he comes back, he cannot defend the core four staying together. But like I've said, they may not, because of the position they put themselves in with no movement clauses, unless Mitch Marner wants to go someplace, or John Tavares, which I don't see. But unless Mitch Marner wants to go someplace and not be the poster child for failure and absorb the slings and arrows of the fans and the media the next year, he's not going anywhere. So I don't know how much change they can change the periphery. You know, somebody in the chat was saying, well, how do they get a number one goaltender? They don't have the cap space. They have $18 million in cap room right now without trading Mitch Marner. So, but they're going to have to find some bargains, and they're going to have to get some players who will take a little bit less and maybe make a trade or two. But that's what they're going to have to do. And if they don't do it, then they're going to start to decline.
How? Just real quick, Uncle Teddy in Florida. Mike and Norm, I know that we will see you before next season, but I want to thank you for all that you do for us suffering Leaf fans. Great job, Teddy. Thank you so much. Ted, right there, my friends. Does that work for me too? No, I guess not. It does. Okay. Teddy is a long-suffering Leaf fan and a long-suffering OG, an original watcher and supporter of the Leafs Convo. Brendan Shanahan, is he not just a figurehead right now, Mike? Is he just not a guy who is a Hall of Famer who we can connect past success with the success he's never been able to oversee with Toronto? But he's like, I don't know what kind of influence would he have now, other than just being the name, being Brendan Shanahan and tied into a group of to an era that was pretty successful but not successful enough. Like, I don't know how he is leveraging his his stature at the organization on Brad Treliving to get him to do things that he believes will prop up the guys that he's always supported. I at this point, other than making $3 or $4 million a year to sit in the press box beside the GM and just be there, like, what the hell kind of influence would he have going forward?
Well, okay, Brendan Shanahan, when he came in 2014, was Brendan Shanahan, two-time Stanley Cup winner. I think he won an Olympic gold medal in 2002. He's a winner, and he's from Mimico, and he'll bring winning back to Toronto. Now he's Brendan Shanahan, the guy who couldn't get this team over the hump for 10 years. And that's the thing. You cannot sell the aura of championships, and you can sell. I got the organization back to respectability. I did something that anybody in their right mind could have seen that they needed to do for 5 or 6 years, which was tank and get tie draft picks and build from there. He did it.
So there was no ingenuity behind innovation or creativity behind that strategy. Anybody could have done it.
I mean, he didn't even do it from the beginning. I mean, let's just say this. They tried to be good for half of the year that McDavid was the number 1 overall pick, and then recognized that they weren't good, that they fired Carlisle, that they hired Peter Horachek, that they were one of the worst teams in the league, and they had a chance to draft McDavid and instead drafted Mitch Marner 4th. But had they recognized it early enough, they may have had a better chance of getting McDavid or Jack Eichel, one who's won a Stanley Cup and the other one who could win a Stanley Cup. So that's the thing. It's like, he did do it. They did get Austin Matthews. They did build a team that was more respectable and had playoff.
Was he a Tim Lewicki hire?
I think so. Yes.
Right. So there was a time when anyone with name recognition coming to the Maple Leafs made us feel like we were worthy, right? Taking us out of despair into a better place. The John Tavares free agent signing, the biggest free agent signing in the history of the organization, which is surprising considering just how storied the Leafs history is. Just goes so far back to when it was actually successful. So Brendan Shanahan's done his job. He's done his job. Now it's time to, hand over that responsibility of being a figurehead to someone else. And I don't think the Leafs need anybody with name recognition to help get them to where they want to go. But I question his relevance at this point, Mike. He's done what he can, and being kind of a person with a major title, but so many others below who actually roll up their sleeves and go to work. You're essentially there to kiss babies and sign autographs and, maybe do the odd press conference or two. And I don't want to get too deep into somebody who's lost his relevance. What we need to do is focus on how this team is going to change for the better. I don't want to see the Leafs, make the adjustments to potentially scrap out one more goal in a desperate Game 7 against the Boston Bruins next spring. I want to see a team that plays a different type of game from the first game through Game 82 and into a playoff run that, we can believe will be more successful. Take a look at what Florida Panthers are doing. Can the Maple Leafs emulate something like that, Mike, or is the personnel on this team too deep and too entrenched in who they are and how they play to be able to, elevate their abilities and, pack more onto their game to become a team like the Florida Panthers or the Colorado Avalanche or the Las Vegas Golden Knights, or a team like that you can look at and believe, will dig in and go to work and, go on a lengthy run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Last couple of words to you, Mike, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, Steve Simmons in his column this morning, I think, said it in terms of Shanahan very aptly. He said, what happens with Shanahan, who has been in favor of tilting the roster financially with tons of money going to the core four and not enough for the rest of the team? What happens when he meets with Keith Pelly and has to explain not just what went wrong, but what his plan will be for fixing the future? If Pelly doesn't hear something reasonable or tangible, don't be surprised if Shanahan is shown the door. Now, Shanahan could very, very deftly change his tune and say, okay, yeah, I think it's time to break up the core four and do something. But if he doesn't have a plan that Pelly likes, then he's going to be gone. And
how do you one thing to want to do that, but how do you do it? Mitch Marner has to be compliant. What's John Tavares going to do on the twilight of his career right now? He probably
John Tavares is not going anywhere. I mean, I know that there's stuff out there, and then there's a little rumors.
So it's one guy you can potentially take away from this group,
and you're not going to get full value for him because everybody knows now that you want to trade him. Now he has value in terms of, I'm sure there are teams out there that would love Mitch Marner, but the Leafs have to get value back, not only the cap space, but return for him.
Real quick, Mike, Alex Pelly spoke well of Shanahan on Bob McCown's podcast.
Okay. Of course he's going to speak well of him. You're not going to speak ill of him in public. Oh, Brendan Shanahan sucks. I hate his guts. Oh, gee. Oh, okay. Well, he's being wishy-washy there. Of course he's going to be complimentary. But, it's a results-oriented business.
Right.
So, I don't put any kind of stock into, he may respect Brendan Shanahan and the job that he's done in Toronto, but at a certain point, you have to move on. And at a certain point, you have to say, okay, we need to do something here different because this is not working. And I mean, on future convos, we will discuss the minutia of where they go. But yeah, it's going to be a tough summer, especially if we find out Mitch Marner decides he wants to stay, and if they decide, okay, since he wants to stay, we sign him to a contract. I think Leafs Nation will not be happy.
Edward Lee, Marner, Nylander, Bichette, Guerrero. Toronto loves its little boys. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. The thing with Marner, he's entitled to stay. He's a great hockey player, especially in the regular season, a facilitator of offense. He's done a lot during his tenure in Toronto, but like a lot of others who have not been able to complete the fulfillment, he's come under fire, and rightfully so. Like, I'm wondering, for somebody who's pretty darn sensitive, and that family's sensitive, and has got the kind of the weight of the world on his shoulders again, why would he not have a discussion with his agent, his family, and ultimately the team about starting fresh. Don't you think Mitch Marner can go somewhere and help elevate a group and pick up a ton of points and be, an amazing player and not have to worry about picking up the slack that's another member of that team is already in place to do?
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe Mitch Marner will say to himself, I don't need all the attention. I need to go someplace and just be concerned about hockey and not all the noise. And, somebody is saying trade him to Utah or trade him. Yeah, if he wants to go there. If that, also there's a benefit for him if he gets traded that, if the Leafs tell him, well, we're not going to sign you to an 8-year deal. But, we'll try to facilitate a trade, a sign and trade like in basketball or in other sports. There's the possibility of that. But he can very easily say, okay, I'm going to put up big numbers next year. Right. I'm going to go into free agency, get a 7-year deal, and you get absolutely nothing for me.
Right.
And that's very possible. I mean,
the optics of that will not benefit him. He will he will appear to be greedy and selfish, even though that's his contractual right to do exactly what he wants. And the thing though, Mike, is if the relationship is toxic and the environment does not lend to your mental health, and it's potentially time to do something different to advance your own career, even if contractually you don't have to move 1 inch, why would you not consider it? I know there are a lot of OGs and converts and Leafs fans at large who want to see this guy go. Someone has to take the blame. And I was wondering last night if Mitch Marner scored the series winner, how we'd feel about him, if we would feel any different about him. I think it would be a temporary detente between him and the fans. I don't think it would have been long lasting, especially if he was crappy in the second round. Geez, Mike, I don't know what else you want to add to the convo today. I mean, it's the aftermath of another series defeat to the Boston Bruins. It ended a lot later than most of us expected. One of the things I am noticing about the OGs and converts, there's not a lot of heartbreak. Not a lot of heartbreak, not a lot of surprise.
No. I mean, that's the thing. Leaf fans are conditioned for this. and it's sad to say. It's like I wish, and maybe if somebody has got it, send it to me at Mike and Buffalo on Twitter. I wonder whether what the video was like of Leaf fans emptying out Maple Leaf Square last night. We saw that when Nylander scored the goal, everybody was losing their mind.
Yeah,
I didn't see the video when Hampus Lindholm scored the tying goal, but I always harken back, Norm, to that video that I saw from somebody who was recording it at a condo from their condo in 2013. That it was emptying out when the Bruins scored the goal to make it 4-3, not before the tying goal, and not it was half empty when they scored the overtime winner. I wonder how long it took for Leaf fans to get to the go train after that goal was scored. In fact, I wonder if there were people leaving before because they knew they were going to lose. So unfortunately, they're conditioned for this, and that is the fault of the organization, because the organization has conditioned them to being failures and losers. And that's not what this organization should be, and not what the fan base should expect.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Stanley Cup playoffs will go on without the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs Convo will go on with OGs and converts supporting us week in and week out. We'll be here for you. Have your say, guys. Community, youtube.com/the Leafs Convo. There's going to be some polls. There's going to be a place where you can do some outreach and let us know how you feel in regards to this latest playoff series loss to the Boston Bruins. Mike, I'm rooting the organization on to make changes to the group that will benefit it in the future and make it a better team that is more consistent and has more of a dynamic to its overall game beyond just how great it is offensively. it'll have to make that change collectively, or we're going to continue to see the same results. In terms of what happens with guys like Mitch Marner and other transactions, I'm excited for it. Really, I'm all for change that will result in better results for this group. But there's only one way to find out if it all can happen. Is just kind of take it day by day going forward. Get over the sadness of another series loss, and pick yourself up and start moving towards better days. Anything else you want to add, Mike? What's going on at hockeybuzz.com? Same old stuff.
Same old stuff, and it's the autopsy begins on Monday.
Awesome. OG's Converts, thanks so much for all of your support over season 6. I think we did like 55 shows. We'll have a few more to encapsulate this particular season of the Leafs Convo, then take a bit of a break, and then we'll be back for season 7. Don't forget to like the content, subscribe to the channel. No reason to unsub. There's going to be content to come. And then I think season 7 will be our biggest and best, and hopefully that runs concurrent with a successful season with all kinds of changes that are positive for the Maple Leafs. But again, there's one way to find out. Just let it all happen, and you know that Mike and I will be here to react to it. So for Mr. A, I'm Mr. J. The Leafs are done, but life goes on. Enjoy your Sunday. The Leafs Convo is out.